Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Chase. This show is The Daily Creative. This is a show where I take your questions on your journey toward being a professional or aspiring creative. I'll give you a phone number to call in later at the end of the show, but for now I'm going to make a live call. We're going to call Julian on this particular episode and hear what the question is. All right, ready? I've got this queued up here, and let's talk to Julian. This is going to be helpful for you. You're going to want to watch. What volume?
Hello?
Hey Julian, it's Chase Jarvis. How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I think I might be a little bit later than I thought I was supposed to be. Sorry about that. But I understand you got a question for me. We're recording you. I'm super happy to have you on the show, and I want to be helpful. So fire away.
Okay. Helpful's good. So it's kind of a question that's pretty simple, but I know a lot of people struggle with.
Yep.
How can I learn to feel good about the work that I create?
If I could answer this definitively, I would be a very wealthy man because I would have smoothed out a lot of pain for a lot of people over centuries. So let me ask you a follow-up question here. So presumably you're saying like you make something and then a little bit later you look at it and you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Is that a common theme?
Yeah, a lot of times, for me at least, it happens in the process of a project.
Got it.
Too.
All right, so I got two directions I want to take this. First of all, there's this arc of a project, like this is a great idea, and then the next step is, I'm not quite so sure about this, and the next one is, oh my God, this great idea sucks, and then it's, I suck, and then you keep putting an effort in, and you're like, wait a minute, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, everything's gonna be okay, oh my God, I'm okay, and this piece of work is pretty good. And notice it's not like, well, and if it does turn out good, then you're like, not just pretty good, then, oh my God, this is awesome, I'm so glad I pushed through. So on each sort of project level, and I think, James Victori has talked a lot about this, he's a famous designer, I don't know if you know him or not. There's this, Austin Kleon. The guy who wrote Show Your Work, and what else did he write? Show Your Work and Steal Like an Artist. Those are two really great books if you haven't checked that out. But he's got a really funny graph that sort of covers the emotional arc that creators go through on any individual project. So I want you to check out Austin, and I think I'm kind of paraphrasing that journey. But so while you're in the process, that is part of the process. And I would also say that if you don't get into something where you're annoyed at the details and they're frustrating and painful, then you really haven't gotten into it. And if you're just sort of glossing on the surface, you're bouncing across the surface, then you're probably not getting into it enough to make something that's amazing. And so I would say try and get used to that arc on every project. I don't think it ever goes away if you're putting as much effort into it as you should. So that's one thing that I want you to pay attention to. And again, I gave you a couple resources there. Another thing that I think is very valuable is understanding, for that thing, say you make it, you go through that arc and you put it out there, and then 2 or 3 weeks later you look back and you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? And how long have you been creating stuff and putting it out in the world? Or are you a professional and amateur? How long have you been at it?
I'm actually a professional photographer.
Okay.
And I've been putting stuff out in the world for maybe 5 or 6 years.
Okay, cool.
I'd say I've only been good, maybe okay, for like a year and a half.
Got it.
If that.
All right, so that's helpful. So this process, if you've been doing that for a couple years, this process, especially in that sort of first 0 through 5 years when you've considered yourself okay, that the pain after you put something out in the world is greater in the first few years because you're still experimenting with your personal style. You're still learning to be okay with making yourself vulnerable. You're still learning that process of exposing that raw side of yourself and taking criticism and whatnot. And it is a muscle. You use it more, you get stronger. So that's one of the reasons I continue to encourage people to ship stuff. It's like in the startup world, just ship the product, wake up and make something every day and get it out there in the world, because it's a muscle. and you will, this is my belief, and what was true for me was I had that same critical eye every just like few weeks after I put something out there, like, oh my God, what was I doing?
Yeah.
And when you're earlier on in your career, you're learning so fast that you know something 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later that you didn't know when you put that last thing out there, and then you would have approached it differently. And there's and there's this guy called Ira Glass who you should pay attention to Ira Glass. There's this thing called the creative gap. The creative gap is the distance between what you can see in your mind's eye and what you can actually make. And over time, as you can start to make the thing that you actually see in your eye, as you mature as a creative, all that anxiety that we're talking about here, it never fully goes away because I still got it, but it's dramatically reduced. And at the end of the day, the thing that, I think the punchline to this advice that I'm giving you is, and you can hear it, right? It's just, you got to keep doing the work. And the thing that I don't want you to do is let this anxiety or fear or this process of looking back and saying, oh my God, I'm so much better than I was 2 weeks ago. Don't let that stop you or slow you down from creating. If anything, if anything, let this advice, just when times get sketchy and you're freaked out at 3 in the morning, you're staring at your ceiling going, oh my God, I can't believe I put that piece of junk out in the world. Remember this conversation.
Okay. One thing from that I always wonder is, a lot of times, and I know it happens with a lot of people, that pops up when you're looking at other people doing work like yours.
Yes. And there will always be people doing work like yours. You will be ripped off. I've been blatantly ripped off, and I've sometimes been ripped off and someone does it better than I did it. And I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
But that's part of the process as well. That's part of putting yourself out there and being vulnerable. Now, the thing about other people copying you is that should be
not copying,
but just doing the same stuff.
Like looking at other people and judging yourself based off of how amazing they are.
Yeah, there's a couple previous episodes of Daily Creative where I talked about this, and what I want you to do is I want you to look at the work. There's a blog post that I did called Why Comparing Yourself to Others is the Best and Worst Thing You Can Do. The best part of that is you get to be honest with yourself about where your work stacks up to other people who are really good in the industry. And so that's where you should be comparing. But remember, I'm talking about comparing your work, not yourself, and not your self-worth. That's a very important distinction. So just know that if you keep working, in the same way that if you keep lifting weights or keep running or training, you're going to continue to get stronger. The same is true for the creative process. It's a habit. You strengthen that muscle, and you will be able to transcend the jealousy, the frustration, all that stuff. And again, it is good to compare your work, just not your self-worth. I believe in you.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Well, I got to wrap up. I think we're short on time now. Julian, I want to say thanks a lot for calling the Daily Creative. If you have any other questions, keep calling me back. And ultimately, I'm looking for, in my social feeds, for how this will have impacted you. So check in with me here in a few weeks or a month or two, and I will be on that shit if I see your post in the social world.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Of course, man. Thanks a lot. Keep making.
Will do. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. See you, bud. All right, do we have time for two, or is that a 10-minute jobber? We got time for one more? Just it?
We'll do one.
Just one. All right. Friends, thanks, Julian, again for calling in. If you want to, I think there's so many questions out there, but you better be learning from my answers to Julian. And if I can answer your question specifically, that's great, but I hope you're picking up that there are so many people that share the same challenges that you do. That's the thing about the Daily Creative. It's like a crit in art class where you get to hear everyone else's problems. My hope is that it makes you feel better because you realize that there are other people and that you can learn from anything, from anywhere, from everybody. So shout out to Julian for calling in. If you want your question on the show, it's a very simple thing. Just dial 802-962-4357. There's a little voicemail there. Leave your message. Sometimes Like today, I will love your message and I will call you back and we can have a little bit more of a conversation about it. Sometimes I just answer the voicemail, but that's how you get your question on the show. Be bold, do not be scared. This is a great exercise in putting yourself out there just like you do your work. So looking forward to getting a call from you. Again, 802-962-4357. Thank you very much. See you again tomorrow.